Y'all, I gotta get my audio levels proper. Hold up. Hold up. Give me 1 second. Make sure I'm on point. Hold up. Yeah, okay. All right now. We in here now. Yeah. Okay. All right, y'all. Listen. Okay. Few things that we need to talk about. First and foremost, um, I got access to Sora. I have not used Sora just yet. Those of you that don't know what Sora is, it's the text to video prompt um, AI situation that is actually. Let me just share it with you guys. I have not used it, but I've had it for a little bit. I just haven't used it, but now they've finally they've integrated the access to Sora through ChatGPT. Before you could do that. Before you had to put in like Sora.com and then it'll take you there. So pretty cool. So let me just share my screen right quick with y'all, just so that you can take a look at like what's actually going on. Um, take a look, y'all. So it's pretty dope. It is pretty interesting. Like these particular video prompts are so realistic. I heard that VEO 2 from Google is even more interesting. I think the the physics, I think they say is more realistic. So, but this is pretty dope. So I haven't tested it out. I'll do that. We could probably do a live with that, because y'all know I like test things out and yeah, and just kind of see how that works. Now I also know that there's a certain amount that you have, I believe, per month. Oh, look at the monkeys. Oh, the monkeys are going crazy. Oh, they're going crazy. They are going out of control over there. Wow. Okay. Yeah. For some reason, this reminds me of Wolf of Wall Street. I don't know why. Oh, the monkeys. Why the monkeys? That monkey business. Okay. Um, an eagle. No, is that an eagle? Probably a hawk, a cat hawk. Interesting. Yeah, remember it was only what, a year or so ago when the spaghetti video with Will Smith was memeified. Really, y'all remember that? Wild. And now look how realistic. Look how realistic food looks. Oh man. Okay. Wow. Okay. So there's that. Let's go ahead and kind of get out of this. A couple things that I want to talk about. The biggest one is, y'all, listen, I binge watched Love Is Blind over the weekend. I was like, what am I getting myself into? Never watched it. Apparently, this was the 7th season. They started from like 2020, which is very interesting. So Love Is Blind came out during the pandemic. Whoosh. Yeesh. Yeah. So that's interesting. Let me double check, make sure my audio levels is proper. Okay, yeah, we proper. Okay. Yeah. So saw Love Is Blind, and it really made me think about how quickly you first of all, how you can empathize with the participants who are in the quote unquote pods, right? But how when you're put into this pressure cooker, you can cause people to fall in love so quickly because that's all they got until they get out of it. And my, till they get out of it. And then the crazy part is they're exposed to social media, friends, family, whatever, and then things start to switch up. Things start to switch up really quickly. So it's so we're gonna talk about that because there's some of y'all that's out there, y'all are desperate. Y'all are desperate not for love, but y'all desperate for clients. What's happening is y'all being put in this pressure cooker on yourselves, like you're putting this pressure on yourselves, and you are romanticizing, you're looking over, glazing over, or glossing over, I should say, red flags, maybe some nautical flags, and y'all getting yourself into a lot of trouble. So we're gonna talk about that. It could perhaps save one or two of y'all to not dive all the way in, in this love is blind kind of what I would call the love is blind effect versus really kind of taking your time. All right. I'm not going to say the longer you take, the more desirable in the sense you become as a consultant, as a designer, developer, whatever, when you're looking for work. But no. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about it because that is not necessarily the case. Sometimes you have to jump and jump quick. You have to act quickly, or else, whether if it's an RFP or maybe just a quick referral, whatever it is, if you are not sometimes quick enough, fast enough, the first or the second, as good as you are, you probably won't get that client. So, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about when y'all just go right in and y'all miss all kinds of stuff, and then the truth starts to unveil itself when you finally have worked with or starting to work with this client. And like, oh, I did not know that this was the case. All right, so let's dive into that. And what I'm going to talk about, I think tomorrow, we're going to talk about something that actually is, oh my goodness. I'm sorry, y'all. Crazy. Mustache is mustaching. We're going to talk about something that is probably going to help those of you that are probably asking why some people are very excited about 2025. And I want to share with you the reason why many of us are excited and positive about 2025 is not because of the humdrum New Year's resolutions and we're just, it's a fresh start and we're ready to turn a new page. Yeah, that's cool, but it's not really that. It's because that we put in a lot of the work in 2024. So we're looking for the return on investment. Some of y'all put it in from 2023, some of us 2022, and we're just like this. Sometimes you can just tell. Y'all know when you're about to close a deal, it just feels right. Yeah, sometimes you can just tell. And for many of us, this is the year. So a lot of us were super excited because of not just because it's a new year, it's because of the work. I gotta swipe my eyebrow when the work. Whole forehead need to get that work. We put in the sweat. So the sweat equity is about to pay off. And so we're definitely looking forward to how things will pan out. Right. So, but we can talk about that. We can talk about that tomorrow. Might even talk about now even more so, 2026. Like, let's go 2026. Like that probably should, for many of us, be the focus. I know that sounds so anxiety driven, already thinking about the next year, but not really. Why? Because even down to certain reward, some of y'all know that I like the statuses of like reward systems and things like that, right? So like Delta and some of the other. So you can't get the benefits of becoming a silver, gold, platinum, whatever medallion person unless for that year, unless you put in the mileage and what they call the MQDs, the medallion qualifying dollars. Unless you put those in, and let's say for instance in 2024, you will not get it in 2025. Like the status will start all over again. So even then, it's like you have to put in. Now, I'm not advocating for how they created the system, but there are a lot of systems that work like this. What you do in the previous year or the year that you're in right now is what will count for the following year. All right. So we'll talk about that a little later. But I think that also kind of connects and it helps a little bit with what we're talking about tonight, because some of us are still really rushing towards wanting to have some quick results, and we're only in the middle of January. First of all, we're in the middle of January. Can y'all believe that? I mean, we're 2 days away from being in the middle, but we're almost there. And you're looking for results like right now. And put in the work this year. If you know that there are things that you just didn't get to last year, it may not come to fruition this year, and that's okay. There are things that I know will not come to fruition for me this year because of not prioritizing those things last year, and that's all right. But there are things I definitely prioritize, and that's what I know I'm looking forward to. Last year, the year before, like I prioritized those things, so I'm looking forward to the fruits of that labor. And in this year. And then if something comes, I mean, this is kind of where we get into miracle territory here. When something comes and you didn't expect it, you might have touched on, you might have put a little bit of effort into it, and you turn around like, oh wow, your efforts have been multiplied. That's what we call blessings, right? When you put something a little in, and then you get blessed because of what you have actually done. Now, there are different definitions of blessings, so there's that. But what I am saying is that even if you didn't do anything and you get something, which I would assume you could call grace, right? You did nothing and deserve nothing, and yet you still got it. Wow, you know what? Super grateful for the fact that this actually happened when I probably didn't expect it to happen until like maybe 2030, and it's happening in 2025. We can break that slip down a little bit later. Even talking about the mirror principle, we might even talk about that tomorrow too, and just how the things that are happening right now in your life is because it's like a delayed reaction. It's because of what you have done before, but it's yeah. Whew, all right, we'll get there. We'll get there. All right. So mm-hmm. Well, let's dive in. Let's dive in, y'all. Okay. So for those of you that don't know what Love is Blind is, it's basically people who are finding love. They are, I don't want to say desperate, but they are very intentional on wanting to find the love of their lives within I think like a 30-day period. And out of those 30 days, it's the first 10 days that they are meeting somebody or talking with going on multiple dates in these pods, and they cannot see each other. So they are actually learning and understanding and gathering data, right? They're gathering information about this person. They're starting to gain feelings, and all of this is going on without even being able to see the person. And the hypothesis is, can you truly fall in love with somebody without ever seeing them? Can you have an emotional connection without the physical first? Of course you can, right? I think that that's obvious, where you don't have to necessarily see someone, but you can create that bond. But the question is it really love, or is it just a strong emotional connection? Is it love, or is it what I just learned recently last year, or limerence, which is the it looks like love. It's not lust, but it looks and feels like love. But is it really love? And then there's some shades of things that make it a little bit different. So these individuals, they find love in the pods. They engage, and the man engages to the woman without seeing them, and then they live together. They go on vacation, and like this honeymoon, like a honeymoon before the honeymoon. They go on this kind of few-day honeymoon phase with each other, and then they go from the vacation to then the real world. That's how it works. I think that, and this is just my opinion, we're gonna walk through a lot of things this evening, over the next maybe 45 minutes or so. I think that if you put people who are intentional about looking for something in a box, they're in a box, y'all. As fancy as the pods look, it's a box. To talk to each other in a box with multiple people, the likelihood, and I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of people who probably didn't make the cut, right? So that's fair. People who didn't find their love, but I'm gonna say that it looks like the majority of the people do, and so they focus on those individuals during the show. But if you put yourself in that box and you make yourself intentional to find something, it's almost as if I'm not I'm not undermining the show. It's almost as if though you can convince yourself that I invested. I am now totally cut off from everything else and I'm focusing on this thing. So I'm leaving here with something. I can't remember who said it. I think it's Denzel Washington. I'm leaving here with something. And so it begs the question, is it love or is it the idea that you have to rationalize, you have to convince, you have to bridge this cognitive distance of it's not just an experiment. I want to find someone and I'm putting myself out there. And so I'm going to be intentional on finding the person, almost as if can it be forced? The answer is yes. I think for those of you that have seen any of the seasons, you've seen that it has been forced. Or you are asking people, why did you even say yes to this individual? Wow, you don't really even like them, let alone love them for real, for real. Like, what are y'all doing? Right? You've seen that. So with the context of with Love is Blind, people are put into these pods. They go through this engagement process without seeing each other. They start living together. Let's start connecting the consulting engagement kind of process too, because it's very similar. You have initial proposal. Hey, listen, very similar, by the way, because you propose in the pod. You propose being a consultant for a client or a potential client, right? A prospect in the same way. The only difference is for those of us that are more seasoned with proposals, we don't give proposals out. And this is probably a caveat for some of y'all, something that's really great mental shift here. We don't give proposals for the client to say yes or no, as much as giving the proposal to what degree they're actually going to work with us, because we did all of the work we did all of the work before. So by the time those of us that are seasoned in this, by the time we send the proposal, it's not crossing our fingers, will you work with me? Just like if there's a person who is seasoned in getting to know the individual, by the time they go down on one knee, it's not with them crossing and hoping that the person is going to say yes. I can almost guarantee it's like that, right? Like they're going to say yes. Like, well, at least because of that relationship, they're going to say yes. So interestingly enough, engagement with proposal with consultants is the same thing, very similar. So you got the proposal, you got the project scoping, you've got the contract that's going to be signed, because there's a lot of back and forth that happens too. It's not just one and done, depending on the size of the project. Sometimes it could take months to kind of go through this process. And then at the end, there's eventual full collaboration. Well, it depends on the project, but it could be full collaboration, or, it could be a do it for you type of situation. The whole point is there is an end to that process, and then the work gets done. So let's take a look at how we can take a look at the transitions and the challenges in Love is Blind and some of the common shifts that we can see. Because I ain't gonna lie, I started watching season 1. I was like, oh, okay, all right, I can start to see the pattern here. It's yeah, okay. I don't think I'm gonna go to season 2. But the point is, they're not gonna hook me in, y'all. The point is, season 1 is pissing me off. Actually, man, they get me mad. But the point is, there are some common shifts that also can occur, that also happen in the professional consultant client dynamic as well, right? And one of the shifts, the biggest shifts, is the honeymoon phase that happens, where there's this pure romance kind of vibe that are these key turning points in both relationships. Someone looking for love, someone looking for an engagement with a client. So when it comes to these pods, right, you can kind of synonymize the pods to the initial engagement in consulting. So, I should probably write this out, y'all. That's what I probably should do, but it's okay. You're just gonna have to listen to me for tonight. The absence of these external distractions, right? So what's happening is you are focusing on an emotional and intellectual connection. You're eliminating physical appearance as a factor. All of these things are happening when you're in the pod. Okay. There's also an intense focus on compatibility because looks is out of the question. So there's this rapid bonding that begins to happen because that's all you got is you in the pod. And of course, you leave and you connect with the rest of the guys, you connect with the rest of the ladies. But at the end of the day, as you guys kind of talk about your experiences, you come back into the pods and you have these multiple dates. But it's like like I said, it's like in a pressure cooker. It is very intense. And so you have these deep conversations that happen very quickly. Why? Because you only have 30 days. You only got 30 days to find your mate. And so there's also there's high levels of curiosity and enthusiasm. So it sounds like a great time. And I'm like, listen, I'm looking at it, yo, that's how it looks like. They're having a great time. And there are those of us who can be conversationalists. I don't really consider myself a conversationalist, but who we know how to go deep. And if we want to go deep quickly, we have the ability to ask the right questions, to open up ourselves a little bit more than some might. And so it gets the other person feeling comfortable and you can have that exchange. And then, you can create those authentic bonds, right? But we'll get there. It can also have its downsides. So that's when we're looking at like the pods, right? The pods, when it comes to um, romantic relationships, is similar to like once again, the initial proposals, like the early proposal phase, the rapport building that's happening when you're a consultant. So it's like you're focusing on the first impressions and also the compatibility checks. By the way, there's a compatibility check for those of you that want to avoid. I'm just going to tell this to you now. I think I've got this from who is it? I think it might be from one of the consultants, not Alan Weiss. There's another one. I think Blair Enns, where you ask 3 questions. Why me? Why now? Why this? It helps you to slow things down, puts you in the position to have the potential client, the prospect, kind of reframe the conversation of why should you actually pay me? Right? Versus, oh, I really need you. I really need your business. Like, no. Why are you looking to work with me? Why do you need to work with me with this? And then why does it have to be now? The sense of urgency makes a huge difference. Many of you know this in business because there's people who need problems to be solved. It's important, but it's not urgent. And so they delay. We talked about that. We saw that quadrant, right? The Eisenhower matrix. They schedule it out. And so that can impact when you actually can gain someone's business if it's super important, but it's not really urgent. So you're now waiting on them. So one of those things to keep in mind. So there are these compatibility checks, right? Where you're understanding the client's needs. You're looking for their goals, especially their pain points. You're also showing and expressing your approach as a consultant. You're also demonstrating or exhibiting your values, perhaps the style that's explored while you are solving certain problems, but you're not giving away the secret sauce, so to speak. You can give away a framework, you can give away a methodology, because you just know that at the end of the day, if you really were going to do it yourself, you wouldn't have hired or would be looking for somebody else to do it. Once again, for those of us that are in this space, we understand that there's enough that we can give that we don't feel as if somebody's going to take our proposal and run with it. People do that all the time, by the way. Right. But if you do it right, and if you develop a relationship, by the time you send the proposal, it's not, once again, whether or not they'll work with you, it's to what level, how deep is the engagement going to be, right? It's just confirmation that the proposal, if not every proposal is like that, right? RFPs might be a little bit different, but the point is, when you have the ability to engage for a more extended amount of time before submitting a proposal, it's really confirmation. It's like, okay, good. So verbally, we agree that we're going to work with each other. Here's the levels at which we can work. And you won't see, for me, you won't see my proposal being more than 2, maybe 3 pages. But because it's like, what am I doing? I don't include the company. I used to younger me. I used to include, the bio, the meet the team, like all that stuff. Now, once again, it depends on the engagement. I get it. If it's an RFP and you don't have the opportunity to talk with them before sending anything, you have to front load it with all of that information. I'm not talking about that context. I'm talking about when you've had these conversations. It's like, why are you doing all that? They should know you by now. So now all you need to do is you need to now send out, at what level are we going to do this work together, right? So here it is, where as when you're in the pods, you are, um, absent of external distractions, and you're focusing on compatibility, kind of doing the same thing as a consultant, and the client as well. When you're building that rapport, you have some vision alignment that's going on. You're articulating what success looks like for both you and also for your client. You're excited about the potential of the project, wondering if it's the perfect fit, and not even wondering at this point. You're you're assessing to see if it's going to be, that perfect fit. You don't catch those things if you are desperate. If you are desperate for relationship, or if you are desperate for business, you miss some things. And you're like, oh, well, there's a flaw here, but it's not that big a deal. Because why? I need to pay the bills, or I need to feel loved. Same stuff. Or I need to find an apartment. I remember the first apartment in New York City. I missed all of the red flags because I was just in dire need to find a place to stay. By the time I signed the lease, the dust settles, you move in, you're just like, wait, ain't no windows in the living area? The only way we get sunlight in the central area is if everybody opens up their doors if they want to. Crazy stuff. Anyway, you can miss some things if you're not taking your time. So there's also, though, minimal, what we would call minimal external constraints as well. So you have this detailed scoping, but it's often without the real world friction of the day-to-day execution. The communication tends to be highly positive, forward-looking. What client wants to hire a consultant that's pessimistic? Well, if this does, if we can, if we're able to solve your problem, this is what it would look like. We just gotta hope that everything works. But I'm not paying you to hope. Now, we understand as consultants, we don't necessarily guarantee, specific results, but we guarantee our work. And there's a difference. I had this clause, and I learned this from one of the older consultants. I guarantee my work, where I just basically say, if we don't meet these objectives, and like mutually, we go through it together. And this is where you got to know the right client that you're with, because sometimes if you're not with the right one, and y'all are not on the same page, you don't want somebody that nitpick. Like you just don't want a nitpicker. You want somebody that understands you, understands your process, and vice versa, so that the communication is there. It's open. You know how long or how often you need to, kind of create that cadence of updates, whatever the case is. Point is, like if we go through this together and you realize I haven't met your expectations, I haven't met the expectations, but the actual metrics, I give you your whole money back. Everything, the entire, like that's how much I stand behind what I do. Why? Because a couple of things. For those of you that have ever read the book by David C. Baker, I think it's called The Business of Expertise. When you become an expert at something, after a while, you can see and understand certain patterns. And by being this pattern recognizer, you become an expert in that area. So 9 times out of 10, the same questions, 9 times out of 10, the same solution is going to solve the same problem, even if it's in a different context. So you at some point was like, I can solve this problem. And if I don't, here you go. Right. So I say that because these are things that we're scoping out, but there still is no real world friction. The real world friction happens when you can do a full guarantee like that, is because you've lived that life. You know what it's like to solve a problem in the real world with other consultants, and you're like, okay, I can put my name behind this. I can guarantee it before we even start that if this doesn't work out the way that you think or that we agree that it doesn't work out, take your money back. This is cool, right? And so the point is, you want to make sure that even when you have the consultant client connection, that it's it should be positive. It should be forward looking. It's a red flag for me if I'm, connecting with someone, wanting to do work with them, and they're not really optimistic. They're already like, because if this doesn't work out, though, I was like, you're already going to be that individual who. And by the way, caveat, side note, I could. No, I'm going to say it. Usually it's the lower engaging clients that do that. The ones that pay more don't really do that. Why? Because most times they're the ones that don't have the time to be micromanaging and checking everything that you're doing. They just want to know that the results are being done. Check in, please. Just let us know what's happening. But we don't need to follow you every single word, every single part of the phrase. As a matter of fact, every single part of the phase, you'll have things set up, whether it's a Asana or whatever, and your visibility that you create as a consultant, especially if you have like a project manager or someone, those things will be in place so that they wouldn't even have to think about having to check in with you. You already checked in with them. You let them know what's kind of going on already, right? So anyway, so that's the prelim. Everybody's getting to know everybody. It's, we're feeling good. It's like, yeah, you might be my client. You might be my bae. Like, it's the same thing. Very simple. But then we get to the honeymoon phase. When the honeymoon phase, once again, there's high enthusiasm. There's high optimism. There's what we would call this emotional euphoria. You can see that. I saw this in the Love is Blind season. I was like, oh, okay. This sense of a fairy tale romance. And in the consultant client dynamic, there's mutual praise and positive reinforcement. And yeah, I never thought about that. Oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like it's just there. The vibes are nice, right? But one of the things is now in the honeymoon phase, what's perceived versus what's real. So you've got this perception versus reality kind of situation going on where you're idealizing the partner or you're idealizing the project, right? This is an amazing person. I can't tell you how many times I heard the phrase, I love you in season 7. I almost wanted to gag, honestly. Not that I don't love, but oh my goodness, like how many times you going, I love you. Project, same way. You can ideal a project where you're just like, oh my goodness, we're gonna do this. We can even do this. Let me just kind of slip this in there. We can even do this when the new year begins. Some people might have been sick of me talking about 2025, the honeymoon phase of 2025. There's a honeymoon phase in almost everything that we do. Anything that we want to pick up, whether it's working out, working a new job, working a new relationship. Yes, working a new relationship. I shouldn't say working, but anything that picking up a new hobby. There's a honeymoon phase. This high enthusiasm, this optimism, the idealization of the project, the hobby, the person, the whatever it is. But there's also the confidence that you have that challenges will be minimal or easily resolved. Oh, we can take care of that, John. Oh, no worry, Bob. We've got you. Susie, it's all right. No, yeah, not a problem. And you would think that as problems come, it's good. You hired us. We're the consultant. We got you. Same thing in a relationship. Oh, yeah, that was just a minor tiff. It was mind you, it probably wasn't just a little tiff, but that's not a big thing. And it's not even that something happened yet, but it's the belief that when those things happen, it's going to feel that way. Like, oh yeah, water under the bridge. It was, or water off a duck's back. It's just, we're good, right? And so what you don't want to do is you don't want to fall into the trap of feeling like that is what the project or the partner would be indefinitely. How does this happen? Well, there's some driving factors behind the honeymoon phase. One is this idea of novelty. It's new and anticipation. You're looking and you're expecting the surge of the feeling and all of that. So with the Love is Blind couples, what I noticed is that there's that super excitement at just meeting each other face to face for the first time. They can't get enough of each other. You would have thought that they were blind for their entire lives, never seen a person before. And when they finally see this individual, they can't get enough of like their eyes are just taking in that they're reconciling the voice with the face, and they're kissing all over their faces. Is this real? And their physique, everything, just soaking it all in. But there is this intense excitement when they meet the person face to face. It's new. It's the level of anticipation that builds up. Like, I just said yes to this individual behind a wall, and now I get to see the person that I said I do to, or yes to, not I do, that's marriage, but that I said yes to for engagement, and the one that I knelt down on one knee to engage. Excitement, novelty, anticipation. But it's the same thing with the consultant client dynamic as well, y'all. It's the enthusiasm about new solutions that are going to be built and these fresh ideas. You're in the right business when, even as a pattern finder, right? You're looking for the patterns, and you're being very astute, mastering how to solve those problems over and over again, where you find this newfound love for every time you have this engagement, and you know what the outcome is going to be. You know what the issues are. You know how you're going to solve it, but you still have that feeling of novelty, that feeling of anticipation. You still got that in you. That's when you know. That's when you know that you just really enjoy what you do. Because even in that, you probably push yourself to think of new ways to solve the same problem. But the other thing, though, is, and what causes the honeymoon stage, many of you might have experienced this, is a limited exposure to constraints. That's from my lips, not for y'all. This limited exposure to constraints. So what do we mean? So in relationships, you're not yet facing the real life stressors. You're not facing the finances. You're not facing the family dynamics. You're not facing, what it looks like to live with the other individual. In consulting, you haven't yet encountered other things like budget realities, internal politics, unforeseen technical issues. They happen. Even as the expert, you understand that those things happen, and you're not naive to think that they won't happen, but you also embrace, like, if you're human, you embrace the honeymoon phase regardless. You're like, this is so nice. The overthinker in you wants to be like, be careful. It's nice until, but you can't think like that. You can't think like that, all right? So that's how the honeymoon phase begins, or how you can, how it's created, that level of novelty, that level of anticipation, especially, once again, the limited exposure to the constraints and the realities of what actually goes on in the real world. Because oftentimes the honeymoon phase ends when the bubble is popped. And usually the bubble is popped when something happens that rocks that relationship or that consultant client engagement. So it's all, I would say, almost tantamount that in the honeymoon phase, you continue to build, to understand, and to know. I mean, you've done that kind of before, right? In the proposal kind of stage, the initial proposal stage in business, and in the getting to know you stage in the pods, right? And Love is Blind, right? Your compatibility checks and all of that. You're definitely doing that in the beginning, but I would venture to say, I'm no love expert, that what you do in the honeymoon phase is so important, because when those external factors do come, you have an anchor to go back to. Like, you can go back to the point of, remember when, not just you remember when there were no problems, when there were no issues, no, but you remember the connection that we had, the chemistry that was there. We need to find that center again. I think you need to do that in business. You need to do that with your partner. Whenever things start to get rocky, you have to think about what was it like when we did have that feeling of newness, when we were anticipating amazing things, when we had this full on confidence that nothing can stand in our way. The challenges are just, puh, right? Okay. So here's the thing. After the honeymoon phase, reality sets in. Whether that's living together with Love is Blind or the project execution itself and the business engagement. So there is this integration of external elements now. There's the minimum, right? The minimal impact of external elements when you're in your honeymoon phase. Now you're not even exposed to it. You are integrated. Family, friends, work schedules, personal habits, like all of those things, the challenges of living together. You have the shared space and the finances and the personal boundaries. There's a lot that's going on here. There's a lot that's happening. And that's just stage one. Stage two is then there's a shift in communication style. And I can't say stage one, stage two as much as it's kind of all like a blend. Because sometimes people are like, when did what just happened? Well, you don't know what happened because you weren't paying attention to the different things. You weren't paying attention to the integration that was going on with the external elements. But you also weren't paying attention to the shift in communication style. Why? Because now it may be less romantic, but more pragmatic. Because now we have to talk about bills. We got to talk about chores. We got to talk about lifestyle differences. Because not everything is romance. Romance is just one part of communication. So all of that, I love you, I love you, I love you. That's cute. But that's like many people say it's going to take more than love. And I understand what they are saying. One could argue all of that is love. What I'm talking about is the nominal use of the phrase just "I love you." There were couples in the season where, like, when things were difficult, or when there was a little rift in conversation, or whatever, they would just kind of insert the "I love you" as if it was like hey, let's reset. It's like, no, let's be a little bit more pragmatic here. Yes, I do love you, but I'm also saying these pragmatic things in love. And so, anyway. We've got the shift in communication style. And because of this shift, as things become less romantic, there's potential for conflict to arise from how people are communicating in this more pragmatic way, but also from perhaps unmet expectations. Romantically, things may be like, oh, wow, this is amazing. But remember that novelty and that anticipation that you had? You might have had the anticipation of things, the expectation is really of things being here, and then you find out that it's actually here. So things aren't novel anymore. Your anticipation starts to lower because you realize, what I anticipated hasn't really come to pass, even though while we were in the honeymoon phase, I was still in the anticipation stage, not in the things aren't getting met stage. And so you get to this point where you start to talk differently. You start to act and move differently. It's true to this point. 90% of communication is nonverbal. And so a lot of it isn't even just what you say. It's how you move. It's how you act. It's your disposition. So that would be the transition, right? In Love is Blind, where you go to this real life cohabitation, where people are cohabiting with each other, and it just starts the integration of external factors and communication styles. Things start to shift. Well, in consulting, it's like going from contract to actual delivery. It's that project execution piece. So there's increased stakeholder involvement. Oh, some of us know what that looks like. People from multiple departments, varying expectations that now have to be managed, corporate hierarchy. If you did it right, even when you have these check boxes of yes, 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 we will be connecting with the people who are the stakeholders, who are the decision makers. The bigger the company, there's things that kind of get slipped through the cracks, and you have to go back. It's almost like you have to reset back to going to the what the proposal said, if it included it. Hopefully it did, it was included, or you at least have some conversations about that, as far as joint accountabilities and the communication and all of that. Because if not, kind of going back to that honeymoon phase, if not, you don't have that anchor of, you remember what we talked about? You remember how we felt when we decided you can even use those things, you can, in a business. You can pull on some of those emotional while you're still focusing on the logistics, but to get them to realize, oh wow, you know what, you're right. We need to actually get our stuff together before we bring it to you, because there's a process that you have in place. That's on us, right? Now, of course, the conversation doesn't always go like that, but the point is that there is this transition that starts to happen when there's increased stakeholder involvement. It gets more nuanced. So you have these additional layers of reviews, maybe, and sign-off processes. But once again, if you did it right, you would have known. And you don't have to have tons of paperwork to do this. You would know who it is that needs to be reported to, who's going to be, once again, the decision makers, who needs to sign things off. But if the client doesn't have their stuff together, you'll show up and they came showing their best self, and then behind the scenes, as you come in, you realize, oh my gosh, wait, y'all didn't tell me that there were 3 other people that needed to be a part of this. But that comes with practice, that comes with experience, where you know how to answer, how to ask the specific questions so that you don't run into those situations. The same as in a relationship. You ask specific questions so that you can, not that you're looking for the red flags, but having enough conversations, you're able to more quickly identify some of the areas that probably are going to be more challenging, that you can kind of prepare yourself for. Now, you won't be able to prepare yourself for everything, just like in business. You won't be able to. As soon as you sign on that dotted line and y'all get to work and y'all start executing, now I'm not saying you're putting the gloves on for the client, please. We're not trying to punch out the client. We're trying to punch out the problem. But the point is, you won't be ready for everything. All right. But then there are these real world constraints and pressures now that happen in business, because there could be now potential budget limitations. The client is yet asking for another revision of something, or whatever the case is, and you tell them, oh, not a problem, it's just going to cost, if y'all do it right, and they're like, well, we don't really have that, so how do we now? Once again, it also depends on the client. Because you can also have a client that, budget is not an issue, right? So that's just one area, okay? So for those of us that experienced where money's not an issue with a client, it can be other things as well. Some of those things could be tight deadlines. It can be scope creep. Scope creep is a thing where you just have a particular client that, you were going in this particular direction. You signed off on, this is the problem, and this is, the approach to how we're going to solve this problem. But then it's like, start tacking on other things too. Like, hey, so can you also do this, and that? And once again, if you don't have the infrastructure set up, right? If you didn't have a clear proposal, scope creep could get very, and even if you have a clear proposal, but you don't have strong boundaries, firm boundaries, clear boundaries, it's easy for you to fall into, oh yeah, no worries, you can actually get that done for you, because you know what, it actually doesn't take us that long. And once you start doing these, oh, you know what, it doesn't even, it's it's not that big of a deal, we can do it. You start to slowly broaden the boundaries and broaden the engagement to things that you didn't even have planned to solve, which also ties into the budget issue too, and the timing issue. Scope creep is a nasty one. But there's also like this need, right, for data integrity and the technical feasibility. Like, is there even, are the resources, this feasibility, are the resources even available for us to even execute the issue? I mean, execute the solution. Well, what if the tech isn't even embedded yet? I mean, nowadays, there are a lot of resources that are out there, but it could very well be the case where there's just something that is either not available, doesn't exist, or maybe so expensive that to solve this problem, you would need a certain amount of capital in order for this problem to be solved, whatever it is. And so a big one, because remember, money is not just the issue, especially if you have a client where the budget is not the challenge. Organizational buy-in. It could almost even be on a spectrum. If it's not money, it's got to be the people. And you got to get everybody on board before you go to the next phase of the engagement, making sure that because this is where two people, client consultant, can leave the same engagement and be like, we did what we were supposed to do, and they said our needs were not met. The buy-in has to be there, right? So the other thing too, though, when you're going from contract to the actual delivery, is adapting actual communication approaches. What do we mean? So oftentimes, especially when you are feeling like you're pressed to just get another client, you do a lot of sales-oriented language, or just kind of, you're communicating in a very pushing for the sale kind of a dialogue versus more execution focused, where now you aren't talking in order to close the deal. You now need to talk in order to solve the problem. Some consultants can't actually shift. They're still in the mode of, like, in a sense, still proving, so we're doing this because you remember you hired us to do this. And so this is put that to the side. A lot of consultants, when they suffer from like imposter syndrome, when they are having challenges with still having to feel like they have to prove themselves after actually landing the deal, like getting the engagement, they still feel as if they have to stay in sales mode and to use that as leverage for why they're doing something wrong. Pivot into execution mode. Now, sometimes, depending on the client that you have, because you might have missed it, you might have to pull that out every once in a while. Y'all did pay me. Now, whatever you want to do after I leave, you can do. But while I'm here, this is what we're going to do. Now, of course, hopefully you don't have to have, that kind of dialogue where it's like that per se. But depends. Like if you have a tough client, like sometimes you have to have some tough conversations and you have to put your foot down in a very assertive but still yet diplomatic way. The other thing too is like this need for like regular progress reports or troubleshooting and strategic pivots. That is also a way of adapting, because you might have in the very beginning didn't need to have those things, but now the client might be looking for those things. It's almost like in a relationship too, especially when there's like maybe a particular space that your partner might be in and they're looking for affirmation. And one of the things, especially that I've learned, is sometimes they're not going to ask you for that. It depends on the level of their their emotional intelligence too, their EQ, where some are able to use their words and they'll let you know what it is they're looking for, and others don't. Some kind of hint at it or kind of put you in a position to give you the opportunity to, let's say, affirm, or you're looking for like these in a sense progress reports or updates, or in partnerships, affirmations. And you have to be very astute and patient as well to know that sometimes you might be in a dynamic, business or romantic, where the client or the partner might not be able to fully articulate what it is that they're looking for, but they may be acting out in other ways. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to deal with it. Well, you signed a contract, and if then you might have to. But the point is, both to sign the contract to be married to them. But the point is that these are things that you really don't know until you leave the honeymoon phase. When you go to actual delivery, when you go to the real life cohabitation, there's just factors that won't come up until you're put in the real world. That's it. So what about this idea of factors kind of impacting the pure romance? Right? Because that's what it is. When you're in a pod, when you're getting to know the person, when you're getting to know the client, that there's this initial idealism. Well, it may feel or sound a little redundant, but one of them is your external influences like social media, your social circles, peer pressure. So in Love and Blind, it can be your friends, it can be the family's opinions, on who the new fiance is, because that's what it is. It's very interesting when it's like, it's a time to meet the parents, time to meet the friends, and it shifts. It's different. It's really different. Or for the consultant client dynamic, it's the influence of, perhaps depending on how big the engagement is and the client, it could be executive boards. It could also be managers. It can be competing vendors, right? Like, these are the external factors that can start to chip away, in a sense, at that pure romance where there's nothing else. It's just you and me, babe. It's just you and me, client. Yeah. And then other stuff start coming in. Financial realities is the big one. And then they say that's the biggest. Is that the number one reason? Is it communication then money, or money then communication? Why marriages break up? But think about, like, let's go even more immediate with relationship budgets, like wedding. That's a big one. Unless y'all two are just like, we just gonna go ahead and get these certificates signed and just have a little witness and go in front of the court. Like, if you are looking for the ceremony and not the pomp and circumstance per se, but just going for the whole situation, that's a budget. Shared rent, or maybe it isn't shared, but rent, mortgage, right? Future planning in general, whether if it's for kids, whether if it's for retirement, whatever it is, moving. Very similarly, when it comes to project budgets, you've got overruns, you've got resource allocations, like, we need to put 10% of what we've just gotten into this area so that we can actually solve this part of the problem. ROI justifications is another one. Like, no. We have to invest in this side because that is where we are going to get the most amount of our return. These are conversations that really start to, in a sense, I want to say chip away as if they're bad things, but they're pins that will pop the bubble. Listen, at the end of the day, the bubble needs to be popped. Lifestyle and organizational culture gaps is a big one. So we've got personal routines, very similar to like corporate structures. Another way to look at that is like, kind of your value alignment or the culture fit, and your approach to solving challenges. Does this work with this particular company or this particular client? The way that you solve problems, does this work with your partner? What needs to be adjusted? Remember that shift in communication that now needs to happen because you're no longer in the honeymoon phase. You're actually putting in the work. You're executing now, right? So, bunch of things, guys, when it comes to like the external influences, but there are also internal ones as well. A huge one, I just kind of mentioned a little bit before, the emotional maturity and self-awareness. It was crazy how some of these individuals were not self-aware, especially when they're in these interviews. I'm like, wow, you really thought that was okay? It took them a year, because I do be watching the reunions. It took them a year. Well, I say this as if I've only seen one reunion, y'all, but I'm very interested in seeing the reunion because it's a year after taping when they're able to see themselves, that some of them stand on all 10 toes, dig them into the ground, and like, I said what I said and I meant what I meant and nothing's changed. And then others, they look back and say, wow, that I've grown since then. So emotional maturity is a huge one. Self-awareness, the partner's willingness to compromise and grow, or the consultant's and client's openness to feedback. It's a big one. Feedback is so huge, y'all. The communication patterns is another major one. So constructive conflict resolution versus just avoidance or aggression. There are some people in the show that was very aggressive, like just mean. There are others that they use the I love you to kind of avoid things. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Like, just kind of darting the problems. Like, no, calm down. Deal with the issue. Saying I love you ain't gonna solve it. The problem is still there. Transparency of expectations and deliverables is also huge. Just not just in business, but that's also in partnerships. It was crazy to see how individuals would talk. I think this is now happening in season 1. People would talk to other people in the circle, the groups about how they're not necessarily fully attracted physically to the person because they thought, they might probably look a certain way, but they never really are addressing the root of why they're not connecting whatever with the actual person. To the point when one of them said, like, asked the person, was like, why did you say yes if there are all of these issues that have just kind of mounted up? Um, uh, and it sucks to be on the end where people are starting to have or to create these expectations, and then you don't even have a chance. This happens with clients too. You didn't even have a chance to adjust or to pivot. They're just like, yep, everything's good, everything's good, everything's good. And then when it's done, you get a negative review, or you get the ream of constructive feedback that should have happened during the actual engagement or in the relationship. And it's like, wow, we could have had those conversations before. You could have given us a chance to actually work some of this stuff out. But that also goes to the emotional maturity, right? It also goes to how safe perhaps also they may feel. It may not even be because of them. It might be because of you. Your level of allowing them to feel like they can actually come to you with those things. Because sometimes we always feel it's like it's one-sided. Well, they should have told me. Well, do they feel comfortable enough? Or have they done it before, but they just never felt heard? And so now they shut down. And I've been on both sides. I've been on both sides. In the personal on both sides and in business on both sides. And so it's because sometimes people, especially in business, may not think it's the right time, or they don't feel like, I don't want to spend this energy going through all this constructive feedback. I'll just give it to you when it's done. And I don't haven't experienced, well, so I should take it back. I don't think I've experienced that fully in doing work for other clients. I to this day, I don't think I've had a client, if I'm trying to remember, no, that said absolutely nothing. It was like, you know what? I'm just not going to say anything. There's enough conversations that happen to avoid that. Like once you do this enough, right? But I will say that great example. I went to a particular resort and it was just a terrible experience. And I ended up leaving early, to go somewhere else. And they were asking, so how was your stay? So you're leaving early, da da da. I was like, and two reasons. First, I kind of already aired some of those grievances in the beginning. And second, I was like, we on vacation. I'm not trying to go through this entire process with y'all. And I know that what y'all are going to try to do is try to convince me and have these conversations. I'm like, I'm good. I'll send you the review later and, we can talk about it then, and so that's just to say people have different reasons. People have different reasons for why they may hold back, why they may delay, and sometimes why they may not say anything at all because they're trying to either avoid or sometimes they just don't. And it's hard to say they just don't care because then it's like, well, why did you invest your time, your money, or, whatever it is, your emotions into this if you didn't care? So I think that one is less about them caring and more so about there's some other things that are going on that you have to be aware of. And that you have to talk through. But yeah, there's that. But also the adaptability to change. Remember, we're talking about the internal influences of how certain factors can impact the pure romance or the initial idealism of meeting a person or meeting a client. And when it comes to this adaptability to change, just coping with unexpected curveballs, whether if it's a job change, whether if it's team changes, whether if it's a health change, right? These specific things, definitely it can, and when I say chip away, I say chip away, or it can boost. It can get you back to the honeymoon stage, to the honeymoon phase. How you deal with it. But more importantly, the willingness to pivot, like in business strategies and goals, the willingness to pivot some of the things that you might have had let's say on a vision board, let's say as a single person, but now you are in a relationship and realize, I still am going to hold on to what I wanted to pursue individually for myself, but understanding how those things impact now being in a relationship. Same thing with the business, right? So what does it look like? What does it look like when you kind of overcome those challenges and when you choose to evolve together? Well, On Love is Blind, what I've noticed is that the conversations were very interesting. In the reunion, the people that were the most successful had the least to say. Like they not that they were hiding things, but it's just like they didn't have drama. Let's put it that way. The reunions are always reunions. Those episodes, you come for the drama, right? But how do you overcome those challenges? Well, in relationships, frequent communication, frequent and honest. But it's not just honest. There's a difference between honest and kind. And one of the things that I realized is that at one point, there's this one person who was just harping on the fact that, well, I'm just a direct person. I'm direct. So, that's just who I am. But being direct doesn't mean that you have to be unkind with it. You can be direct and be kind at the same time. And a lot of people, they tend to misconstrue, or they tend to conflate that if you are a straight shooter, that you also have to do it in a way that stings. No, not necessarily. So when you check in on someone's emotional well-being, clarifying misunderstandings, being willing to course correct when the conflict arises, like that happens in personal and professional dynamics. Shared goals and shared values. So when you're defining the common ground, remember this happens in business, right? That's what the proposal is about in business. But personally, romantically, when you look at your finances, your lifestyle, you're looking at future aspirations and those things, you want to be able to demonstrate commitment through actions and not just words. One of the biggest things, once again, you're in the pods, you're on vacation. When you get out of the pods, seeing the person that you decided to propose to for the first time, a lot of words. And because all you have are words, you don't get to see, well, how are those words, how do they stand? What do they, how do those words stand up when we now have those external factors? Family, friends, budgeting challenges, whatever it is that comes up, these external and internal, right? Saying it's not that love isn't enough, because it depends on what you believe love is. For me, I believe love is all encompassing. It's not that love is saying I love you is not enough for me personally, because I do believe that with love includes all of these things. It includes having open, honest, and kind conversation. It includes being emotionally mature, and being self-aware and learning to compromise. It includes all of these things, going from proposal to action. Like for me, love is all of that stuff. Love is not just a feeling; it's a decision. It's an action for me. It's multifaceted. For some people, love is just that chemistry, that bubble up, that the butterflies, where it's like, ooh, no. And if that's what it is for you, then cool. For me, it's all encompassing. But what I'm saying is saying I love you is not enough. You got to be able to show. You have to show. Put your money where your mouth is. You have to act on what you say. Who you say you are, and what you say you feel for that person. So that's some of the relationship strategies, at least from the Love is Blind perspective. Now, from a consulting perspective, we have what's called project governance, and just regularity of alignment, right? And with project governance, you've got scheduled status updates. You've got steering committee meetings where you are the one that's like at the helm and making sure that all of these meetings are just not these random meetings that don't need to be had. Like they're purposeful, clear success metrics and checkpoints. These things happen when you create the proposal. The simplest proposals are the clearest proposals that should have metrics. Like it just should. Because then what are you doing the work for? How are they going to benchmark against your work to say that you guys met the mark, right? Risk management and issue resolution is definitely another one as well. Remember, we're talking about the ways that you can overcome specific challenges. And so you need to identify and address potential problems early on. Those red flags, those nautical flags. Transparent communication about delays or budget constraints. Have those conversations. It befuddles me how many consultants, at least the ones that are not like, tied to the McKinseys and the BCGs of the world, Don't talk about money. Like it still feels taboo. How are you supposed to get paid, sir, ma'am? You gotta talk about the money. Because if it ain't about the money, listen, at the end of the day, I do believe that when you have those open conversations early and often, it can mitigate a lot of the risk that happens when it's time to start executing. But then also just long term in general, long term relationship building when it comes to these clients. It's something that I definitely have to continue to work on. Where I've done amazing work for clients, but then I don't check up on them. You know, unless and it's crazy because I think what I do is I take for granted that the work I do is so great that they'll come back, they'll circle back, even if it's like a year later or 2 years later, like, hey, yo, look at, and for me, it's that intentional practice on me circling back and me connecting and communicating. So going beyond transactional interactions and forming trusted partnerships, super important. And just kind of continuing conversations about possibly future projects and future improvements. So now you don't just have a client, you have a client with, in a sense, like a lifetime value that's super extended. And you also stay top of mind. All right. So that's my parallel, y'all. Some parallels. That is Love is Blind and consulting client engagements and how they relate to one another. Don't fall into the trap. Don't fall into the trap of this idealism and then you realize, oh, this is not the client that I thought. Oh, this is not the person that I thought. Don't skip the steps. Don't skip the steps. So what you should do is you should really take stock in just how the honeymoon phase, if you're not careful, not even if you're not careful, I think this is just in general though, like it gives way to complex realities. It just does. I think the honeymoon phase is okay to have. Have the honeymoon phase. Like, why wouldn't you want to have that? I think that's why people fall in love. It's the honeymoon. I don't think anybody falls in love to say, I'm ready. I'm ready to work hard and sweat. I love, go to the gym for that. Go work out for that. And even then, I don't love the gym. I'm not passionate about the gym. Something I need to, and oftentimes you treat your relationships as if it's a duty. Oftentimes, you just show up, and the other person can feel that, right? Show up as like they're a responsibility. They're not a romantic partner. But even in business too, like people can understand like when it's like you just really love what you do, but you just got to get the work done. Um, so the initial idealism is natural. Embrace that, but it should be balanced with preparation for real world challenges. Embrace it. And success in both scenarios, success in marriage, the romantic relationships, success in projects, it depends on proactively managing a few things, those external factors. It depends on proactively managing your emotional intelligence. Yes, you can manage. You can manage it. You can develop and manage your emotional intelligence. For business and for relationships, it depends on how you manage ongoing collaborations with each other. So you've got a few things that you should be looking at, right? You should be looking at, just once again, putting in the effort. That it won't happen unless you put in the effort. You need to have consistent communication, right? Early and often. Being able to adapt to change. Super essential. All of those things. All of those things are essential. Sometimes your significant other or your client will respect the fact that you're trying, and then they can come in and they can give you some effort, some feedback, and how you can divert, or to reappropriate those efforts in a way that's going to be more helpful to meet their specific needs. But those things are essential to sustaining growth, whether in love or business, right? And then also what you want to do is also to kind of keep the feedback loop open on both sides, like encouraging reflection. just how to preserve the positive energy of the initial phase while integrating the realistic expectations for the future, because that's really the reality. All right. So anyway, those are my little thoughts there. I think that you are, hopefully, after this stream, a little bit more wiser, more wise, and that it was enlightening. I saw on StreamYard earlier that there's a live stream issue. Let me double check and see if that was if that was still a problem. Let's see. Let's check, y'all. Let's see. Choop, choop, choop. Oh, okay, we there. Oh, cool. Cool. All right. Awesome. Yeah, okay. Okay, the live actually went through, which is great. But I think what we can't do, I don't know if it's with LinkedIn, I can't tell, at least right now or yet, like if people have commented. It's not popping up on StreamYard. So it actually might be in the actual LinkedIn live stream, actually. So I'll double check that right quick. But overall, though, any questions? I see there's a couple of y'all that are on here, kind of watching. So that's that warms my heart. But I don't hear from y'all. Would love to hear from you. Oh, Wednesday, if all goes well, Wednesday we do have our first exec. He's gonna come in. It's funny that we had this conversation. We're actually gonna have it again. I'm still inviting him because even though he might not have had an official C-level title, he's like the guy behind the guy. He is the at least I do believe one of those individuals in the professional realm that doesn't have the official title, but man, does he have the ear. He lends he lends the ear, or he has the ear of the C-suite. And so whenever he makes specific decisions, or whenever he executes, you guys will have a chance to meet him in a couple of days. I think that's going to be a great conversation. And yeah, that's it. Okay, I'm hopping off LinkedIn. I think you guys are tired of me, and I will stay on Twitch for a little longer and just see how y'all are feeling. All right, y'all. See you in the next stream. Twitch, we still on. YouTube, I guess I'll see y'all later. I still haven't navigated YouTube yet the way that I know that I should, at least in the past, like creating the thumbnails and y'all. Right now I'm just shooting the shots. I'm just getting the streams in, and then I'm gonna go back and do the those things that